Trump is assembling his team and making the liberals scream. The president-elect tapping Tom Homan for border czar in charge of mass deportations. The former acting ICE director reacting on something called Fox and Friends.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's on. Is it on this channel?
Morning, maybe?
I don't know.
Kilmeade's on that show.
Ah, that explains it. Where he vowed to end the crisis.
Public safety threats and national security threats will be the priority because they have to be. They pose the most danger to this country. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or independent. Border security is national security. I've seen some of these Democratic governors say they're going to stand in the way. They're going to make it hard for us. Well, a suggestion: if you're not going to help us, get the hell out of the way, but we're going to do it. To the American people, President Trump is going to secure this border. He's going to save American lives.
You know, Judge, you got to hand it to him. He does look like the Wall. I think he means business. You know what I mean? This is not somebody who's trying to win a popularity contest.
No, in fact, he said he doesn't give a damn, if you'll excuse my English, what anybody thinks of him. He's got a job to do. He's going to do it. He was in the first Trump administration. He has been a stalwart supporter of the president during the last 4 years. Look, the president has a mandate. Popular vote, the Electoral College. The American people want this. And right now, they're estimating that there are 20 million illegals in this country. And when you try to assess who's going to be deported, Homan said the bottom line is if you come into this country illegally, you're not off the table. So I say to myself, I suspect they're going to start with the criminals, all right? First, it's the felons, the violent felons, and then it's the criminals, and then it's going to be, what about those people who had appointments for asylum and then never went to court? They should be deported immediately as well. So they're going to try to revive the Remain in Mexico. They're going to try to get these individuals to stay in a third country. And all of these governors, they can resist all they want, but 75 million Americans want this done. And what I think is interesting, Greg, is that they said that Homan was also in charge of all maritime and aviation security, which tells me that it's not just the people at the border, it's the bringing in of drugs, I imagine, and other things in terms of air and water. So, you know, the Dems fear-mongering, as they will definitely do, they're not going to have any credibility because they don't really have an audience anymore. This is what the American people want.
You know, Jesse, I always use the Larry Kudlow hot tub rule with immigration. Last one in is the first one out.
This is about people that cut the line. Now they go to the back of the line. And it's not that complicated. Barack Obama deported 5.2 million illegal aliens, Jessica. The deporter-in-chief.
I call him that. I wanted to win on that, but that didn't work out.
So I think on day one, when he's a dictator for the first day, he's going to just tell all the illegals, you can either leave the country now or we can make you leave the country later. And that's not that controversial. And he's going to start with, I believe, a lot of the Venezuelans, the Haitians, and the Afghans. Start with the criminals, as Judge Janine said. And also there's 1.3 million migrants that have already been ordered to be deported but have not left. So we're going to start with them next, and then we'll get to Jessica. The military, you don't even know if I'm joking. The military...
Send me back downtown?
The military is going to play a key role because they have the basing, they have the aircraft, and they have the vehicles. So that's has to be done. And you're going to have to, as you also said, begin negotiations with Mexico to get Remain in Mexico back. And you have a lot of leverage because USMCA is up for renegotiation. We do $800 billion of trade with Mexico. There's a lot of pressure points there, plus his threats to go after the cartels. Again, a lot of pressure there. There's a woman who's in charge of Mexico now. She's apparently a left-wing radical. We have no idea how she's going to act with Trump, so we're about to find out. But they've really depressed wages, and they've sent rent and housing costs through the roof, not to mention hotels. You can't even get a hotel in Manhattan anymore. It's because all these illegals are sleeping here. So if the Dems resist this, it's, again, they're going to have to be resisting the will of the people, which is what got them in trouble in the first place.
Excellent point, Jesse. Jessica, let's widen the scope to the appointments in general. Let's look at something like Secretary of State. I'm not putting any names out there, although I'm free. But, you know, what is the point of entertaining like senators when you should have all these interesting people on the outside that should be brought in?
Well, it depends on anyone's background. There are people on the outside who have pertinent experience, and there are people on the inside who do as well. You obviously have to think about keeping seats if there's any danger that someone's from a swing state. But it seems like from the smaller list that Trump is considering both. I know that Rick Grinnell is on there, and that Rick has served previously as the ambassador to Germany and did that well. Sure. I do want to say something, though, about Tom Homan. So for everyone who said Trump doesn't know what Project 2025 is, he just put a key contributor in charge of this. And Tom Homan was interviewed on 60 Minutes, and he was asked, is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families? And he said, of course there is. Families can be deported together. He also said that it didn't mean if someone was coming to be, quote unquote, rounded up and grandma was in the house and she's undocumented, that it didn't necessarily mean that grandma wouldn't be taken to. And you can say Donald Trump has a mandate till you're blue in the face. Taking grandma is not what people were voting for. They were voting for criminals to be kicked out of this country.
Abuela is the Spanish word.
That's right.
Really,
I'm not
Jessica?
Abuela.
Really, Jessica? That is just so offensive,
Jessica.
not knowing the name. Dana, what are your thoughts on where they move forward? What do you think of the choices? We heard about Lee Zeldin, our friend.
I think Lee Zeldin's an excellent choice for EPA because he knows what it's like for example, in New York, they have these crazy net zero rules, and they're making farmers and ranchers comply with them when the state doesn't have to. So I think he has a great, if he gets confirmed, and I expect that he would be good. But I would say this. So there's about 8 weeks left, and maybe not that much for congressional action. The Democrats want to try to get as many circuit judges confirmed as possible in the next 8 weeks. One of the ways that they can do that is if the senators on the Republican side don't show up for the votes, so they don't have the numbers. And what Senator McConnell asked for today, and President-elect Trump backed him up, or vice versa, they both said Republicans need to show up for these votes, because if not, how important is the appellate court, right, Judge? So there's circuit court nominations, and they've basically said everyone has to get to work so that they can not let the Democrats run the table on that.
Did you see what happened in California, the gas tax?
No. Gas tax, no.
Yeah, my sister called me today. God, I hope it was my sister. 85 cents a gallon?
They passed
Just
it?
to fill up?
Yeah,
A tax?
a gallon. No, per gallon. I don't know. I could be wrong.
For
But
gas?
you called me. If you were lying to me, Les, I'm in trouble. But also banning motorhomes by 2025.
What?
Yes. God, I hope
Les.
this was my sister. None of you guys have heard this? I'm in big trouble.
President-elect Donald Trump looking to prioritize the border on day one, with former acting ICE Director Tom Homan slated to be his #1 enforcer. My next guest says that Texas is already preparing for a potential surge in migrants crossing in before Trump gets in. Texas Department of Safety Lieutenant Chris Oliveras is with us now. Lieutenant Oliveras, first let's talk about where you're actually seeing this activity pick up.
Well, good afternoon, Charles. Great to be with you. So, of course, in Texas, at the start of this year, illegal border crossings have been down over 88%. Now, that's in part of the credit goes to what our DPS personnel, our National Guard soldiers, and even Governor Abbott has put in place in the course of the last 4 years. But we're still seeing an influx, and I would say an influx of illegal border crossings anywhere between 200 to 300 a day in certain areas along the border. Now, for us, obviously, we want to get those crossings down to zero, and that's why we do these mass migration exercises where we surge resources to areas that are known for high trafficking areas, and we want to act as a deterrent, and we want to prevent any illegal border crossings from taking place. Our goal is to get those numbers down to zero. Now, again, it's very difficult, especially when we have over 1,200 miles of border to cover in Texas alone. But nonetheless, we have great resources. We have our National Guard soldiers, our DPS personnel, and we can respond to areas, to surge those areas, to conduct these mass migration exercises to prevent and deter illegal border crossings. And that's what we're seeing right now. Some of the crossings that I mentioned that are taking place, anywhere from 200 to 300 a day, are taking place on federal land where Border Patrol agents are at. That's why some of these immigrants are avoiding our state troopers, avoiding our National Guard soldiers, because they know if they do come into contact with us, we'll place them under arrest, or there will be consequences, as far as them crossing. So we are seeing a reduction as far as those efforts.
I have to ask you, Tom Homan, how do you think that's going to, your thought on his selection and how you think he'll be able to pull off the job?
Well, I mean, it's a great selection. No one's tougher on the border than Tom Homan. I've had the privilege of knowing Tom, over the last 2.5 years because of the border situation. He's been a very strong advocate of what we've been doing in Texas, and he supports what we're doing. So I think, having him at that top level is really going to provide that decisive leadership that we need moving forward and get the border secured. Working with Texas, we still going to maintain our posture. We're going to remain proactive in what we're doing, and I'm sure the current administration is going to rely on Texas helping them carry out their policies, and as far as reaching out to Governor Abbott, because no one knows, what we've done in Texas. We do it. We've done a great job in Texas for the last 2.5 years in securing our state, and really setting the example, the foundation of how to secure a border and what you can do if you actually follow the rule of law and actually apply consequences to the situation.
There's no doubt that Texas has been exemplary in all of this. And now Tom Homan, to your point, it's hard to think of anyone who would have been a better choice. Lieutenant Olivares, thank you very mumuch. Always appreciate it.
Joining me now, Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Congresswoman, this was infuriating when I first saw it. I know the Daily Signal broke this story. FEMA Administrator Daily Wire, and Deanne Criswell released a statement Saturday from FEMA saying, I want to be clear to all my employees, the American people, this type of behavior and action will not be tolerated. FEMA will hold people accountable. They violate these standards of conduct. Is that good enough for you, Congresswoman?
Not at all. In fact, I actually personally wrote Criswell a letter demanding answers, as well as Chairman Comer is asking her to come in and testify. I expect a full investigation, and I want to see emails because I don't think that this is just an isolated incident. To put it in perspective, Laura, my district was actually one of the hardest hit districts. We had 13 people die. A majority of my constituents had their claims denied with FEMA. And so I do believe that, as you saw, this was a very weaponized administration, and I do think that they know of more instances, but they're probably covering up for it. So it's our job to get to the bottom of it.
Well, they were accusing former President-elect Trump of politicizing disaster relief when he was president. But, I mean, this is classic. Yeah. I mean, this is literally playing with people's lives and their property and their daily needs, basic necessities. I mean, they'll give it anything that migrants want coming across the border, but some poor person with a Trump sign doesn't get help. It's shocking. I mean, it's infuriating. We were hearing reports out of North Carolina that people were also being denied, and I think that that's when I started kind of picking my head up and kind of listening to some of those claims, because, again, after the hurricane hit both Helene and Milton here, Biden called down and assured that we would have all the assistance that we needed. But now you're finding that this was not just an isolated thing. I mean, this woman went as far as directing in person some of these people that were doing the claims to just ignore them. And that's simply unacceptable. I don't think that it was a conspiracy theory. We know that President Trump was right, but I do think that outlets like the New York Times should retract their accusations saying that that was misinformation, because clearly we were correct, and clearly this is just more evidence that this administration, instead of focusing on people and Americans and uniting the country, they're just further dividing us. Congresswoman, I know you're in the House, but the Senate leadership fight that's going on, or it's a race, and it's a family fight. Thoughts about that, given what's at stake in a very short window that President Trump has to enact his agenda? Make no mistake, Mitch McConnell is absolutely trying to knife Rick Scott and ensure that President Trump's agenda is blocked. Mitch McConnell has done more harm to this country than I would argue that Schumer has. And the fact is that Thune and Cornyn, if they really loved this country and they wanted to back this president, they would stand aside and let Rick Scott be the majority leader.
Okay, Hugh Hewitt, let's start with you. I would just note, we looked up what the cost of having all of these new immigrants, travel to cities, put up and given money in all of these cities. That's $150 billion in 2023. So there's a severe cost to that, too. What do you make of these suggestions that the abuelas and other family members are going to be ripped out of their homes, Hugh?
I do not know what the cost of a murder victim is. I do not know what the cost of another terrorist attack is. Yeah. But I thought the framing of that by 60 Minutes revealed the brokenness of legacy media, and why I hope that in the second Trump term they are cut off completely and nobody talks to them, because they can't give up the narrative, in air quotes, No matter how trashed it got on Tuesday last, they will not give it up. Everything is framed as though Republicans are criminals or something. Homan is what I look for, competent and eloquent. All four of the appointments that have been made thus far, Ms. Wiles, Congresswoman Stefanik, Stephen Miller, competent and eloquent. Mr. Homan is as well. Very happy with the start, and I don't think the media can in any way downgrade it.
Here's what Tom Homan said his priorities would be on Fox and Friends this morning. Listen.
Public safety threats and national security threats will be the priority because they have to be. They pose the most danger to this country. So we're going to prioritize those groups. Another priority, this administration has lost over 300,000 children that were smuggled in this country by criminal cartels they can't find. That's another priority. We need to save these children.
What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I'm absolutely thrilled again that Tom Homan is going to be our border czar. The facts that he's stating, we've seen them. We've seen the number of people that have crossed. But here in Texas, as you said, you know, the numbers that came out and voted for President Trump this election were phenomenal. And, you know, we had all gotten to the point where we kind of felt like we were preaching to the choir. And we have a special thank you to Fox News for staying with us and covering this, because many times we felt like people across the country weren't listening. But it's very clear that the message got out.
Well, you please keep us posted on happenings down at your ranch, because things could get pretty interesting between now and January. And as we've seen, you know, when word spreads that you better get in before the laws in the U.S. change, it does have an impact. So we will continue to follow it. Laura, thank you very much.
I saw today numerous governors from sanctuary states saying they're going to step in the way. They better get the hell out of the way. Either you help us or get the hell out of the way, because ICE is going to do their job. We're going to take the handcuffs off ICE that the Biden administration put on them and let ICE what they do best. And let me say this. Back to the viewer, Joe Biden. They promised, this administration promised, they're going to concentrate on the criminal aliens. That was a priority. Secretary Mayorkas said it. I looked at the stats today. The removal of criminal aliens is down 74% from President Trump. We have more criminals here than we ever had. So we got plenty of targets out there, and the men and women of this new administration are going to go look for them. They're going to look for them in sanctuary cities. If sanctuary cities don't want to help, get out of the way. I'll double the workforce in that sanctuary city. We're going to do our job. Despite the politics, we're doing it. So get used to it, because we're coming.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.